People get no sleep education whatsoever. You know, when you were at school, did you get those classes about risky behaviors, about drugs and alcohol and safe sex and diet, nutrition? I don't think that's true. I don't think the data supports my claim, so I had to reject it. I think sleep is actually the foundation on which those two other things sit.
Our sleep quality is more important than our diet and exercise combined.
We think about wakefulness as being the thing that's necessary, that we accomplish so much, and sleep is the price that we pay for wakefulness. And yes, that's true in part because sleep is reparatory. If you look at the data, wakefulness is low-level brain damage. And it's very clear that that's the case, and sleep provides a sort of a repairing and a cleansing of that. We actually have to ask, is there anything that sleep doesn't support for brain or body? And the answer seems to be no. Every physiological system in the body and every single operation of the mind is wonderfully enhanced by sleep when you get it, and demonstrably impaired when you don't get enough.
It is diet and it's sleep. It's those two things. That's the wheelhouse for optimal health. It really is. I mean, when it comes down to health, the things that either erode health or support it is what you put in your mouth and how well you sleep. That's really it.
Somewhere between infancy and now, if you look, even toddler age or childhood, not only do we abandon the notion that sleep is essential, but we actually chastise people for getting enough, and people become proud to tell you how little sleep that they get.
I think there's definitely periods that we all will have to go without getting enough sleep, right? I think that's inevitable. The question is, how do we make people more aware of it and more conscious of it, right? And how do we also then, once that awareness and consciousness happens, choose to act on it?
If you could just get an hour or two, sometimes it's better to stay up the whole night.
You know, if you take a step back and you think about this thing called sleep, so when we're asleep, we're not finding a mate, we're not reproducing, we're not socially interacting, we're not gathering food, and worst of all, we're vulnerable to predation. Now, on any one of those grounds, sleep should have been strongly selected against in the course of evolution. You know, if sleep doesn't serve an absolutely vital function, it is the biggest mistake the evolutionary process has ever made. It is during deep sleep when we do a lot of information processing. And it's particularly during deep sleep when we take memories that we've recently learned and we essentially cement them into the architecture of the brain. In fact, it's during deep sleep that there is this elegant file transfer mechanism that happens, where your brain shifts memories from a short-term vulnerable reservoir to a more permanent long-term storage site within the brain. And that means that you are essentially protecting those memories. It's like taking files from a USB stick and putting them safely onto a hard drive. That happens during deep sleep. Deep sleep essentially future-proofs that information within your brain so that you wake up and you've retained rather than you forget. You need sleep after learning, but you also need sleep, however, before learning. But now to actually prepare your brain a little bit like a dry sponge, ready to initially soak up new information. And without sleep, the memory circuits of the brain essentially become waterlogged, as it were, and you can't absorb information. So you need sleep on both sides of the learning equation. Sleep to prepare the soil of the brain for fertile sort of seeding of the information, and then you need sleep afterwards to germinate it and secure those roots so that you don't forget, you will always remember. We've realized that sleep is much more intelligent than we ever imagined, that it's during dream sleep when your brain actually performs, it's almost like a form of informational alchemy, where dream sleep takes all of those memories that have recently been fixated by the deep sleep. And deep sleep, by the way, comes principally in the first half of the night. REM sleep comes in the second half of the night. That you need to take what you've learned and firstly just fixate it, grab it, cement it. And then comes REM sleep, and REM sleep takes those fresh memories and then it starts to collide them with all of the back catalogue of information that you've got in the brain. So it's a little bit like group therapy for memories, is because you interconnect that information. And it's REM sleep that actually seems to revise our mind-wide web of associations. And this means that you wake up the next day and you can divine creative solutions to previously impenetrable problems. We are a dark-deprived society in this modern era, and we need darkness to allow the release of a hormone called melatonin to help time our healthy sleep. But in modernity right now, we come out of the day into our homes or we stay in offices, and our brain is still being told it's daytime, it's light, because of artificial light. And it's Edison that, in some ways that we have to, thank, because it was his light company that popularized he was the first person that took control of the night, and for the first time we dictated when it was light and dark, not the rotational mass of the planet, around the sun. That was transformational in some good ways, but also for our sleep, it was a devastating blow. Your brain and body need to drop their core temperature by about 1 degree Celsius or about 2 to 3 degrees Fahrenheit to initiate sleep. And it's the reason that you will always find it easier to fall asleep in a room that's too cold than too hot, because at least the cold room is taking you in the right thermal direction that your body wants to naturally go to get good sleep. Now, you could then kind of get recursive and say, okay, that's good, so your body needs to drop, but why does it need to drop its temperature? Well, why are we that way? We're that way because we are diurnal species and we were designed to be sleeping at night. And our bodies latched on to the natural drop in temperature as a cue and a trigger to fall asleep. And in modernity, we have dislocated ourselves with constant ambient temperature. Or worse still, we don't ventilate. So we evolved to be told to go to sleep using this thermal cue, together with light is the other thing. For a long time, we thought it was just light that regulated our sleep. It's not, it's light and it's temperature, those two things. And if anything, it may be temperature that's even more powerful than light, but both are powerful. So you get into a hot bath and you think, well, it's because it makes me nice and relaxed, or I get warm and toasty. Relaxed, yes, but toasty, it's the opposite. What happens is that all of the blood will rush to the surface of your skin away from the core of your body, which then takes the heat out from the core, and you get out of the bath and you get this massive dissipation of heat. It's sort of all of the blood is just brought to these massive radiators that are the vascular surfaces of your hands, your face, and your feet. They radiate most of the heat out. And therefore, the core of your body, the temperature plummets, and that's why you fall asleep faster. I did a poll with some colleagues who lived around the world and grew up in different parts of the world. And I said to them, when you were at school, did you get those classic sort of lectures or classes about risky behaviors, about drugs and alcohol and sort of, safe sex and diet, nutrition, physical activity or PE? It was always part of, the regime. Did you have a lecture regarding the importance of sleep? And zero. Almost everyone said yes to all of those other things, and no one had a sleep education. So to come back to your question, we're never told about temperature, but in part, we're never just told about sleep per se. If you take a step back and you think about this thing called sleep, so when we're asleep, we're not finding a mate, we're not reproducing, we're not socially interacting, we're not gathering food, and worst of all, we're vulnerable to predation. Now, on any one of those grounds, sleep should have been strongly selected against in the course of evolution. Add them up as a collective, what on earth? If sleep doesn't serve an absolutely vital function, it is the biggest mistake the evolutionary process has ever made. And now we're realizing that Mother Nature did not make a spectacular blunder, that sleep just services every single system within the body.